Morning, everybody. Today we're going to do a blueing olive thorax pattern, but with a feather tip wing. This is kind of a, I wouldn't say a forgotten style, but a lesser used method of putting an upright wing on a dry fly. I talk about it in this installment of my recent newsletter, clearly depicting on how to do these. These flies work just as well as any other pattern. Most people, when they tie thorax patterns these days, they use either like CDC for the upright portion of the wing, or a trigger point, or any kind of synthetic. But I want to show you how to use the tips of a hen wing. So what we're going to do, I've got a size 14 hook in the vise, just it's a little bit bigger so you can see it. This is on the large end for the olives that I like to fish early in the season. They're typically 14, 16s, 18s, somewhere in that size, depending on where you're at. Some parts of the country these are hatching right now. So we're going to start our thread. I'm using a Vivus 8/0 in an olive. I'm going to start my thread right about where I want that wing to start, which is usually 1/3 to 1/4 of the length, hook shank length back from the eye. Once I've kind of done that, lay a little bit of a thread base, I'm going to bring my thread almost right back to that point where I started. I've already selected a pair of hen feather wings. You want to lay them convex side facing each other. So go into your Herbert Miner, and like how that worked out, I'm going to pick two new ones. Pick your two feathers. When I say convex side, that's curved side, so they're going to be facing one another, the tips together, kind of like this. Once you've got them in place, you can clip away what you're not going to need. We're going to want to measure those two like you see here, and then there's one of two ways you can actually mount these to the hook. You can either pull the fibers back like you see here, which works really well on larger ones like this 14. You could do that just like you see here, or you could trim those feather barbules. I'm going to pull these back like you see. And then you're going to take one loose wrap right on top of that. 2, 3. This will kind of position your feather in place. And then you're going to take about 5 or 6 turns rearward over that feather. Clip it. And then we're going to bring our thread back up to a point, right up to the base. We're going to lift that wing, advance our thread in front. And what we're going to do to post this, there's a couple different ways you can do it. The best way to do it is to build a wedge. If you want that thread to bite, if you turn it clockwise, they'll cord it up. And then we're just going to build basically a thread pyramid right in front of that wing. And as you can see here, a very limited amount of thread turns will work to get that in place. What you can also do to ensure that wing isn't going to go anywhere, you can just take a very, very tiny bit of resin after you've posted it, like you see here, and then hit it with your torch. Once you've got that in place, now we can build the rest of our fly. It's nice to build a little bit of taper in advance there with your thread. We're going to tie in our tails. There's a couple different ways you can tie in tails. You could do hang the thread off the back if you'd like. And the thread will actually help you split the tail, but I'm going to do a little bit of a dubbing bump, just a little ball right on the end here. As you'll see, you don't need a lot, very little in fact. And then I've already pre-selected 4 microfibbits. I'm going to use 2 for each side. They're a little easier to work with if you keep them kind of secured together. They get problematic when they fall apart, or they come apart from one another. So I'll tie the two pair in together. I want them to be a little shorter than the length of the shank. So I'll tie the first pair in. So it's that long. Go right to there. One loose wrap, two loose wraps. Take the second pair on the near side. One loose wrap, two loose wraps. And this is where if they're a little off, you can just take a look. Adjust your length. And once I've done that, you can just wrap your thread over the back end, trim your butts, and then come right back to a point about there. I'm using superfine. This is very forgiving dubbing. So now we're going to dub the abdomen section of this fly, or the body. And because I have a natural taper, you can almost get away with a nice little dubbing noodle. I don't like the way that looks. A dubbing noodle that's got stand by here. There we go. No taper to it because you've already kind of built some taper in the underbody. Just need a little bit more. We're going to dub right up to our wing. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our hackle. I've already pre-selected a done hackle here. As you can see, trimmed away the butt section here. By trimming those little feather barbs away from it, it'll actually give it something to bite into. And then we'll dub the rest. So after I've done that, I'm going to pull that feather away from the wing, and I'm going to dub right behind it first. So done that, put a half hitch on there, grab your hackle pliers, and then we're going to take, depending on your feather, we'll take at least 2 turns in front of that wing. I like to do a couple behind and then come back through the front just like you see here. Tie it off. 2, 3 in front, 1 behind, put a half hitch. Use your whip finish tool. You can whip finish it. If you want to put a little bit of resin on your thread wraps, totally can. Ever so gently put a little bit on there. You don't need a lot. Take your torch, and then the last thing you're going to do, because it's a thorax pattern, we want the bottom flat, so this rides flat in the film. It's a flush riding pattern. I haven't had enough coffee this morning, if you can't tell, guys. That's it. That's your little feather tip wing BWO Thorax. It's a great little fly. I still like the way these look with feather tip wings. That's just me, but I'm a little bit more of a traditionalist with stuff. There's a time and a place for everything. Just gives you another option. It's super easy to mess around with. That's it. Like I said, you can change these. If you want to do these for your blue quills, you can make them mahogany brown, same kind of color wing. that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. You can join the newsletter, whatever, share it with your friends. That's it. Have a good one. I'll catch you guys in a few weeks.